Imagine waking up one morning to the blaring of air raid sirens, not in your city, but halfway across the globe, as two superpowers edge toward open conflict. We're not talking about science fiction. These flashpoints exist today, simmering beneath the surface of diplomatic rhetoric and military posturing. What could trigger the outbreak of World War III? Over the next 20 minutes, we're unpacking 10 chilling scenarios that might ignite a global conflagration, exploring the facts on the ground, the human cost, and what the aftermath could look like for every one of us. Welcome back to Global Insight News, where we cut through the headlines to bring you clear, credible analysis of the world's most pressing stories. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update on geopolitical tensions, military escalations, and everything in between. Let's start with the flashpoint everyone's watching, the Taiwan Strait. China's military budget has tripled over the past decade, with repeated naval drills around Taiwan. Beijing considers the island a breakaway province, while Taipei insists on its sovereign democracy. A routine weapons delivery by a U.S. carrier strike group could spark an accidental Clash 1 missile, one misidentified radar signature, and suddenly both sides are unleashed. If China launches a blockade or amphibious landing, the United States, bound by the Taiwan Relations Act, might intervene. The human impact is devastating. Millions of Taiwanese civilians displaced, a regional economic meltdown, and supply chain collapse from the semiconductor industry. Diplomatically, we'd see alliances hardening. Japan, Australia, and NATO members forced to choose sides, risking a chain reaction of military mobilizations around the world. Now consider Eastern Europe. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has already tested the limits of NATO's collective defense. If Moscow escalates by striking a NATO member, say, targeting a Polish airbase from Ukrainian soil, the alliance could invoke Article 5 for the first time since 2001. What begins as an effort to push back an aggressive neighbor ends in Western artillery raining down on Russian forces, while Putin retaliates with tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield. The human toll would be catastrophic. Hundreds of thousands of military and civilian casualties, radioactive fallout in Eastern Europe, and a full breakdown of food and energy supplies across the continent, driving millions into flight. Shift your gaze to the South China Sea, where freedom of navigation operations by U.S. warships challenge China's island building and artificial reefs. If Manila or Hanoi request defense assistance after a Chinese frigate fires warning shots, the U.S. could be pulled into direct combat across major shipping lanes. Imagine a world where Singapore's ports are blockaded, oil tankers are seized, and choke points like the Strait of Malacca become battlegrounds. Global trade would plummet, economies would contract, and inflation would skyrocket. For ordinary people, groceries and fuel costs would double overnight, and the specter of supply shortages would shatter consumer confidence worldwide. Next, let's turn to the Middle East. Tensions have been rising between Israel and Iran for years. A miscalculated Israeli airstrike on an Iranian nuclear facility, believing it to be an imminent weapons site, could provoke Tehran to launch a massive missile barrage at Haifa or Tel Aviv. Israel might respond by hitting Iranian ports and oil fields, dragging Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and possibly Turkey into the fray. Iran's proxies in Lebanon and Yemen would open secondary fronts, turning the Levant into a multi-sided war zone. Civilians would suffer famine and displacement, and global oil prices would soar above $200 a barrel, pushing struggling economies to the brink. Don't overlook South Asia, where India and Pakistan have faced off over Kashmir for 7 decades. Both possess nuclear arsenals and maintain high readiness status. A terrorist attack in New Delhi or Mumbai, blamed on militants backed by Islamabad, could trigger an Indian conventional strike across the line of control. Pakistan might respond with short-range nuclear weapons aimed at military bases. The doctrine of limited nuclear war, once theoretical, becomes reality. The fallout could extend beyond to neighbors. China might feel compelled to protect its ally Pakistan, while the US would face pressure to de-escalate. But in a world where every second counts, misunderstandings could spiral into a much larger nuclear exchange. In an era of interconnected digital infrastructure, cyber warfare poses a different threat. Imagine a coordinated hack that knocks out major power grids across North America or Europe during winter. Emergency systems fail, communication networks go dark, and chaos reigns in major cities. Nations suspect each other of state-sponsored hacking. America points to Russia. China accuses the US when retaliation takes the form of kinetic strikes on data centers or undersea fiber optic cables. Military commanders might mobilize real-world assets in response. The lines between virtual and actual war blur, dragging global powers into a kinetic conflict over digital infrastructure. North Korea remains one of the world's most unpredictable actors. Kim Jong-un's regime has modernized its ballistic missile arsenal, conducted underground nuclear tests, and threatened the United States and its allies with unprecedented language. A South Korean election could bring up president pledging a tougher stance. North Korea responds with a nuclear test or an ICBM launch over Japan. US missile defenses attempt to intercept. Fearing an existential threat, Pyongyang threatens nuclear strikes on US bases in Guam and Okinawa. A limited nuclear exchange in the Pacific could shatter hopes for regional security, forcing China and Russia to decide whether to support their ally or intervene to contain the crisis. Turning to Africa, the Nile Basin dispute between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam offers another flashpoint. If Ethiopia fills the reservoir unilaterally, Cairo fears catastrophic water shortages. A military strike on the dam could flow upstream and retaliation from Addis Ababa, dragging in regional powers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, who back different sides. The Red Sea shipping lane, one of the world's busiest maritime choke points, could be disrupted. Food security crises in North Africa and the Middle East would intensify, amplifying refugee flows to Europe and sparking a humanitarian emergency. In Latin America, the chaos in Venezuela has spilled into neighboring countries. Imagine a Venezuelan military coup backed by a foreign oil consortium seeking to secure resources. Colombia and Brazil might intervene militarily to restore democracy, while Russia and China support the new regime to protect energy interests. The Amazon basin becomes a battlefront, and drug cartels exploit the chaos to expand their reach. The stakes are global energy markets, drug trafficking routes, and the stability of the Western Hemisphere, historically considered off-limits to great power competitions. Finally, consider how an unexpected event, a missile test gone wrong, a high-speed naval collision, or a presidential assassination could spark all-out war. One example, a US destroyer and a Chinese frigate collide near the Spratly Islands, each blaming the other for reckless maneuvers. Both countries scramble fighter jets, one side shoots down a pilot, and domestic political pressure demands retaliation. Before back-channel diplomacy can calm nerves, military orders have already been issued. The result is a rapid escalation: airstrikes, counterstrikes, cyber attacks until global alliances lock in place. Each of these scenarios has its own triggers, but they share common elements: miscommunication, domestic political pressures, military posturing, and strategic alliances that turn bilateral tensions into multilateral conflicts. They remind us that in today's hyper-connected, high-stakes world, any localized crisis carries the risk of igniting a global war. So what can be done? First, diplomacy and crisis hotlines between military commanders must be strengthened to avoid accidental escalations. Second, arms control agreements need renewal and modernization. You can't renegotiate start to over Zoom, but you can reaffirm commitments to no first use and limit deployments. Third, investment in conflict prevention, development aid, democratic institution building, and climate resilience can reduce underlying drivers like resource scarcity and political instability. Now, we want to hear from you. Which of these scenarios do you find most plausible? Are there other flashpoints we missed? How can ordinary citizens push their governments toward peace and restraint? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read everyone, and your insights might shape our next deep dive. Thanks for watching. If you found this exploration of World War III scenarios informative, give this video a thumbs up and share it with friends who care about global security. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for daily, in-depth analysis of the world's most critical stories. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.